Many of us came out of almost a pacifist background and understanding, for whom guns and weapons and killing would be a very strange experience. And yet we transformed ourselves very quickly. When I went to Spain, I didn't know the difference between a screwdriver and a revolver. And yet I learned to become a proficient soldier in a relatively short period of time because of a political motivation. And it was the politics that was involved, the understanding of the great issues that motivated that struggle.
I was introduced in Spain as an organizer, and I became a political commissar on the basis of my participation in the struggles of the Canadian people during the repression. That was it.
We had English cooperative people, we had English trade union leaders, we had French communists, we had American communists, we had socialists, we had the ragtag and bobtail of the working class, plus we had a tremendous number of college men, everybody who was ideally opposed to fascism.
The 15th Brigade would be the English-speaking brigade, made up in the main of young men who came from the States, Canada, England, and Latin and South America.
I was with the Americans, you know, and one thing that impressed me, they all wore glasses, and they all wanted Lucky Strike cigarettes, they all missed their Coca-Cola, you know. Well, they weren't the same kind of people we were. They were school teachers, there was some IWW-type organizers, you know. They were real extreme radicals, you know. Let's put it this way, I don't think any of them ever slept out under the stars. You know, I think most of them would starve to death in the grocery store, you know. They relied too much on the cookouts and stuff like that. We could tough it out a hell of a lot better. Hunk of bread, and even garlic, we'd rub the garlic on the bread, that was a feast. But remember, we were trained back in Canada for a couple of years that way. I think our people done a hell of a lot better there that way. We could survive on our own in small groups, and we did too.
I couldn't get my shoes off, and I had them in my hand, and I was running in my shoes, and I just got on the truck and just made it in time. And I remember that. As soon as we got over the bridge, they blew the bridge.
It was I gave the orders to climb on the truck. They was ready to punch me out for almost leaving them.
Run without my shoes.
I hope this doesn't taste like mule.
Can you eat mule?
Oh, we used to eat a lot of it.
Is that right?
Oh, sure.
I remember that as plain as anything. So do I. And I'll tell you one. Very distinct. I was I think I was the second or third.
Helgi Maves was the first man that signed. Yeah. I was the second. You were the third. Charlie Saunders was the fourth.
That's right.
And went on from there.
And we had a lot of ads in my watches and a lot of things, and I gave it all the way to the boys. Said, well, that's the last days I'll ever see you again.
Right. And you remember Charlie Saunders and you and I decided to get drunk.
Yeah. We were sure we were going to be killed the next day.
That next day was July 6, 1937, the start of the Brunete offensive, mounted by the Republicans to relieve Madrid from artillery bombardment. 6 divisions, including 2 international brigades, fought for 2 weeks on the arid Castilian plains. The Republicans gained 2 miles on a 10-mile front, but this slender victory cost them 25,000 men. By all accounts, the Brunete offensive was a tragic blunder. The international brigades were decimated. The losses of the Lincoln and Washington battalions were so high they had to be merged into one. This is where most of the Canadians served up to that time. By the spring of 1937, many Canadians back home supported the Republican cause. The Committee to Aid Spanish Democracy brought together United Church ministers, communists, conservatives, socialists.
We got funds almost wholly from what I would call the middle-ranking intelligentsia, including a former president of the University of Toronto who put us in the top level of intelligentsia. It was a middle-class support. Came in very small donations, $5 and $10.
We have the highest percentage of volunteers next to France. With the numbers we had, that we rated a battalion of our own, and with our own officers, if possible. And finally, it did come about.
On July 1st, 1937, the Canadian presence was officially recognized in Spain, and the Mackenzie-Papineau Battalion was formed.
Since I was so closely associated with the Mackenzie-Papineau Battalion and with the Canadians, I feel that it was one of the finest fighting outfits that existed in Spain. I think they had a sense of maturity that we were to gain later on. A very large number of Canadians came from ethnic backgrounds and who were single. I think that they had gone through harder struggles in Canada than we had gone through in the States. In a sense, I think they were different. Mackenzie-Papineau Battalion first saw action in October of 1937 at a small town called Fuentes de Ebro.
We'd had our baptism when we come through it, but I can remember going over the top now. The tanks were coming over behind the trenches from us. I nearly got run over with them as they went over the trenches, and I lost my tin hat. Well, I wouldn't worry much about that. And I can remember the way my heart was going. It was literally like a trip hammer, a tremendous speed. Bullets were coming, spinning. Ooh, boy, I'm telling you. And I know Ronnie Livich says, Jesus, he says, they were just going through your legs. He says, I could see them. He said, I don't know how the hell it was they missed it. But anyway, we got so far, we couldn't get there. We were on a rise like that. And they just...
We very seldom had any artillery support or air support. Tanks, once they said, well, you'll have tank support this time. Here comes 3 tanks. So come time to attack, one of the tanks went and it was promptly knocked out, and another one, and the third one left, you know, no use losing the tanks. As a rule, we had a few hand grenades, and when I first went up to the front at Teruel, we each had 15 rounds of ammunition and 2 hand grenades for the whole platoon that I was in charge of at that time.
In December 1937, the Republicans launched a major attack on Teruel. For political reasons, it was an all-Spanish offensive. But later, the International Brigades were called in.
Yeah, there were 3 of us came out of Teruel. 3 of us came out. It was a dramatic finish after some days. Historically, I suppose you would say it was a good fight. It had the pictorial, dramatic character of being in a landscape where it could be seen from the surrounding Sierra Hills. We relieved the Austro-German Brigade, which in my opinion was the most exemplary of all the International Brigade, and we Canadians had the honor of relieving them, and by coincidence that's when the counterattack of the fascists took place. It was rough, tough, and we lived on Spanish cognac and little red Dutch cheese. And after some 3 or 4 days of day and night, why, 3 of us survived and withdrew.
Franco's armies recaptured Teruel. The Republican losses were enormous. In the city alone lay 10,000 dead.
The question always was, ganaremos la guerra, you know, are we going to win? What the hell could we say? We'd say, sí, you know. And then they'd say, when, you know. And we'd say, oh, mañana, you know, espera. And they knew we were lying, and what could you do? You couldn't say directly, we're getting the hell out of here, you're holding the bag, it's finished. We never did say that, and I don't think they even believed that. Losing was too much, and they couldn't accept that. It was like, you're going to die tomorrow, you won't believe it. But it was obvious we couldn't make it.
Franco was more fortunate. The Germans promptly replaced his losses with new equipment. The planes sent by the Luftwaffe to the fascists bore the latest technical improvements.